to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here. Now let me ask you a question. Do you spend too much time doom scrolling or doing the kind of things that just give you cheap dopamine? Maybe it's checking social media notifications or spending too much time on videos that just get you hooked in these algorithmic loops. If so, you might benefit from this session because I was working with a client that was a high-level executive at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And they found themselves in their spare time chasing that cheap dopamine. Now, in real terms, when you look at what they were earning as a salary plus their stock options, they figured out that an hour of their time was worth $600. So that's almost like, if you think about it in terms of 60 minutes, it's kind of like, well, $10 a minute. So therefore, they could really get a sense that if they spent an hour doom scrolling, it was costing them $600. And that was acting as a pattern interrupt. And they didn't really want to feel that way. Now, this hypnosis session is designed to do two key things: to let them know that actually dopamine is a wonderful thing if it is linked to progress, if it's linked to accomplishment, if it's linked to things that they can take pride in. Dopamine's a wonderful neurotransmitter. It keeps people growing and moving forward. This is why throughout history and civilization, we've tried to accomplish more and more things, because dopamine is the reward system. But companies have figured out that they can create almost a nation, a planet of addicts if you get them hooked on the dopamine linked to short form entertainment. And social media is the best example, because a lot of people find themselves from doom scrolling, but it could be gambling, it could be a game, it could be social media feeds that aren't necessarily video related, but more text related, like Twitter. Some people will constantly check a post every time they get a new notification because it gives them that dopamine. Now, what this is about not saying dopamine is bad, but saying cheap dopamine is actually stealing time, stealing resources, and there's an opportunity cost. And it's based in Hawaii for the induction because they had a recent holiday there, and it links into certain themes and principles to enable them to imagine a future of what could they accomplish if they traded in the cheap dopamine for the quality dopamine. And there's a few metaphors in there as well. Now, to get the best out of this session, I would encourage you to think of, where are you getting your cheap dopamine from now? Is it from YouTube? Is it from social media? Is it from something else like WhatsApp messages or dating sites? Wherever you're getting your cheap dopamine, think of that and get a sense of what an hour of your time is worth. So when you hear the $600, it could be more, it could be less, depending on how much money you earn. And that isn't to say that there is no value in having rest and relaxation and recreation, but there's a big difference if you're choosing to spend your time to watch a movie on Netflix to feeling like you have to kind of get that need of dopamine met. So first of all, think of where you're getting your dopamine from. And then secondly, think about what would life be like if you could take all of that time that you currently spend chasing cheap dopamine, and what would it happen, and what could happen in your life if suddenly you took that same time, that same energy, and fueled it into something that gave you the dopamine that comes from accomplishing or learning or growing or evolving in some way, and then you get more value from this session. Now, if you want a bespoke one-on-one session with me, the way to do that, rather than just listening to my recordings, is to schedule a free consultation call. Now, I have a website, which is adamcox.co.uk. And there you can book a free consultation call. We'll have a chat around about half an hour over Zoom. I'll get to know you and your situation, and I can let you know how many sessions I think might be useful to help you in whichever area of your life feels like it would be most beneficial. For now, though, you might get some value from this session. So find a quiet, relaxing place, the kind of environment you're not going to be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in that calm, slow, wonderful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, feel a wonderful feeling of relaxation. Position your body in such a way where each breath takes you deeper relaxed. And you can sink into that wonderful feeling of ever increasing relaxation. That's it. And the deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the deeper you breathe. As your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I want you to allow your imagination to take you back in time, not long ago, to a time where you were in a cove with a lagoon there on a beach in Hawaii. I want you to imagine wearing whatever is comfortable and appropriate to be on that beach by that lagoon. Imagine the sunshine on your skin. Perhaps even imagine paddling in the shallow waters of the lagoon. Maybe you can recall the temperature of the water, the sensation of wet sand between your toes. And I want you to imagine what it would be like to imagine that you have that entire beach, the entire lagoon, all for yourself. It's just your imagination. Let's make it a private beach just for you. And I want you to imagine somewhere you see a tiny plant. And I want you to imagine that that tiny plant has brightly colored different leaves. And I want you to imagine that each leaf of this plant enhances or activates your sensory and perceptual abilities. And I want you to imagine what it would feel like to take one leaf of that plant there in that cove on that beach next to that lagoon and just place it there on your tongue or under your tongue. And just imagine that this plant has psychoactive or psychosensual abilities, enhanced neuroplasticity, a higher level of sensory acuity and perception of the unperceivable. And then imagine going on an adventure within your imagination, Perhaps you can imagine a hammock, or perhaps a blanket on the beach, and just imagine eyelids feeling heavier and drifting off into a wonderful, magical adventure within your imagination, there on that beach. And as you breathe in, imagine breathing in a color that represents the creator consciousness. Not a consumer, but a creator. And if that has a color, imagine breathing in that color. And then imagine a color that represents calm authorship. And breathe in that color. And this feels like a swirl of colors, empowering colors. And as you exhale, I want you to imagine exhaling an attachment to cheap dopamine. I want you to think that there are some animals that exist that when a parasite takes hold, they are influenced by the parasite. It changes what they crave to eat. It can even change what they do. Most addictions are like parasites. Once it takes hold, it can encourage a human to do more of something that benefits the parasite more than the host. So as you exhale, I want you to imagine breathing out a color that represents any parasitic holds that you may be attached to. Maybe they're dark and grey. Breathing in an empowered consciousness and exhaling anything attached to being the host of a parasite or the slave of a neural pathway. Each breath feels liberating, freeing, exciting. And perhaps you can hear the sound of gentle waves nearby. And I want you to feel that a lagoon is like the sea but protected, still and clear, where the water is shallow enough to see the sand beneath, and just soft ripples move gently across the surface. And when the sun is shining, the sunlight breaks into patterns that shift without effort. Sometimes a lagoon is created because it's shielded by a reef or by rocks. The reef and the rocks do the hard work, so the water inside can remain calm. I want you to get a feeling here in this place, in this journey in your imagination. I want you to feel that you are protected. This is a safe, still place. A calm place. Nothing you need to do. And I want you to feel that your mind is a wonderful place that can be volatile, but also calm. And right now, feel that your mind is like the warm, still water of a lagoon. Imagine your physical body is still there on the beach. But in your imagination, imagine there is a part of you stepping slowly into the water. And as you look back, you can see your physical body there on the beach. And notice how the water is warm. It doesn't need to be exciting. And it doesn't need to be dull. I want you to feel that the water is just right. And your nervous system recognizes this immediately. Because just the sensation of water on your skin is not the feeling of chasing dopamine. It's a feeling of connection and mindful sufficiency. Nothing to fix, nothing to consume, and nothing to prove. That when you're in nature, you have presence. You are there in a symbiotic relationship with the nature. And as your body settles, I want you to feel that calm does not reduce power. Being calm concentrates it. I want you to think of an advanced martial artist. They can be calm, composed, powerful, and intentional. Just because there is the capacity to do something doesn't mean there's an obligation to do it. It's better to be the warrior in the garden than the gardener in the war. And then imagine floating in that lagoon. And I want you to become aware of two very different modes of being. One is consumption, absorbing, reacting, scrolling and grazing, and always responding to what's already been created by someone else. And the other is creation. I want you to think of a movie. How people used to get their dopamine. It would take a producer, a director, a writer, and actors, and editors, months, perhaps even years, to create something that could be consumed in 90 minutes. Creation is deliberate. Creation is slower. Creation takes time. But creation is intentional. And somewhere deep inside, I want you to connect with the creator consciousness within. You were never meant to live on cheap dopamine. Your mind is too capable, too powerful. You were designed for meaningful output. And I want you to imagine your attention as something tangible, not abstract, not vague. Maybe you can picture your attention as capital, clean, liquid, valuable, like a scarce resource. I want you to imagine that if the price of your attention is the same as what your time is worth to pay you, then every time you chase cheap dopamine, you realize how expensive it is. I want you to connect with what just 10 minutes of looking at some mindless videos online that don't enhance your life, don't educate you. Would you pay that much for that content? I want you to think of how much you've spent on theatre tickets, shows, performances, and it dawns on you, you've spent more money on something that is truly impressive, and you're spending similar amounts or more in the value of your attention on things that are limited, wasteful, gratifying but not valuable. Because if you can calculate your hourly rate, you can calculate a rate per minute. So when attention is spent on cheap dopamine, that mindless scrolling, reactive eating, late night stimulation, it isn't free. It's expensive in a way you hadn't labeled before. And that awareness lands calmly, not critically. But some people believe that when you know better, you do better. And what if you had to pay $600 an hour for cheap dopamine? Would you still consider that dopamine cheap? No shame, no self-attack, just clarity and new evaluation. Cheap dopamine isn't cheap. It's simply mispriced. And once something is correctly priced, it naturally uses a different part of your perception. A part that asks, is this worth it? And there in the lagoon, you notice how everything follows an order, where stillness equals clarity equals movement, and never the other way round. I want you to create a new perception that stimulation feels best after regulation. Dopamine lands cleanly after focus. I want you to think that some people, if they're paid before a project or get a bonus before a project, they lose all motivation. The reward follows the effort. When something is earned, it's appreciated. And by linking these things after you do something regulated, after you do something focused, and whether it's exercise or a fast, whether it's learning something new or doing something you've been putting off, when you do the thing intentionally, calmly, deliberately, you earn the dopamine. And once you've earned dopamine, the cheap stuff doesn't really have any appeal anymore. It's almost like when you were a child or a teenager playing a game. Back then it was powerful, enticing, desirable, and yet now kind of boring, mundane, ambivalent. And I want your brain to make that same connection. There was a time that cheap dopamine felt like a mind hack, a treasure trove of unlimited desire. But once you've experienced dopamine that is fought for, earned, the cheap stuff feels cheap. And the irony is, sometimes the cheap dopamine is even more expensive than what you worked hard for. I want you to get a feeling that in the past you've applied rules, rigidity, but it's your nature to break free from rigidity. So instead of thinking of rules to follow, I want you to think of a lane to drive in. And what lane would that be for you? A lane as a creator, a lane that's intentional, a lane where you're making progress, evolving, growing. And I want you to consider distractions and gratification as drifting, straying outside of your lane. And in the past, that would have been an excuse to spiral, to think, wow, I've messed this up now. I can do whatever I want. But whatever you want, ironically, is to stay in your lane. To build such resilience and optionality that no matter what the future brings, you can handle whatever life throws at you. If your unconscious is willing to choose effort, growth, and intentions as your lane, and gratification and distraction as out of your lane, let me know by nodding your head. And whenever you stray, think about what you would do on a freeway if you were straying outside of your lane. Nothing dramatic, just adjusting, refining, and moving back in your lane. And I want you to feel it's that easy. No big deal, no guilt, no shame. Just refinement, adjustment, to do what you want to do more of, and less of that stuff that was just depriving you of what you really wanted anyway. Imagine being back in that lagoon now. Imagine walking back to the beach and seeing yourself there in a deep sleep. Imagine the two separate parts of you become one, the conscious and the unconscious, with a collective mission to unleash the most valuable, capable parts of you, and to be free of a parasite that was feeding on attention. But if attention is your capital, you will be more discerning about where that attention goes to anymore. And instead of feeding your parasite, you will feed your future self, that proud, capable creator that is waiting for you to become them. So it's time to float back now, back to the present, taking all these thoughts and changes with you. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, connect and calibrate into the here and the now. as I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you, starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.